been observed over time that when UAP, unknown aerial phenomenon, does enter our atmosphere, it tends to create a magnetic disturbance. But I was pretty darn adamant when it came to protecting commercial airliners, you can believe me. And I went to Top Gun school, 100 total objects. And I'm extremely concerned about safety of flight. Because if I run into one of these, someone's going to ask us both why we were so damn curious. Because I've been wanting to intercept these things from the moment I saw them. Fast Eagle 01 launches, and these are his words. Disappeared right in front of him. I got laughed at because during the night, after this ADEX back in 04, all of our data was taken. All of our computer data, our radar data, our communications data was taken in the night by some plainclothes people that came on board the ship. Because I knew where evidence was. I don't want to talk out of school here, but I think the leading theory right now from the academic side of the house is whatever these things were showed up in a wormhole. And oh, by the way, we're being watched right now, just so you know. I kind of hope maybe they're watching out for me too. What we do here, gentlemen, is it entirely safe? I don't know if you realize that or not.
Oh, I'm fine with that. They obviously feel that your intention, your power of intention is very strong.
When we started talking, sir, before doing this, it wasn't very long after that the only public profile that I have, it actually received a digital visit from AFOSI, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations.
The following program is presented for general information, education and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be advice of any kind. The content, views, thoughts and opinions expressed in this program are those of the individuals involved. The use of information on this program is at the user's own discretion.
Welcome one and all, wherever and whenever you may be. This is Universal Disclosure, meeting the moment.
This is Reverend Stu from Melbourne, Australia.
And my name is Mike, an active UAP field investigator in Southern California. Won't you join us for today's conversation? In today's conversation, we're going to be talking to Mr. Kevin Day, the chief radar operator aboard the USS Princeton during the Tic Tac incident.
This is very exciting, Mike. Kevin Day is part of the reason that we even know about disclosure.
Absolutely. He served a lifetime in the U.S. Navy aboard vessels such as the USS Chosin, the USS Vincennes, the USS Nimitz, and the USS Princeton. So it is truly our honor and privilege to bring him to our show and have a conversation with him. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin Day. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being here and having a conversation with us. And also, thank you for your service.
Thank you. It's my honor and pleasure to be here with you guys. It truly is. Thank you. And thank you for your shout out on the service. I often forget that myself because, life has changed for me so much.
Absolutely. I mean, I think about how all the people that you have kept safe that you never met or never will, in addition to the ones that you love. It's anybody who serves, I have the greatest respect for.
Thank you. And for all of them too, huh? Men and women.
Absolutely.
And all their families too, by the way.
Yes, indeed.
All these people have families back home.
Yeah, in fact, I live near the Space Force base here, and it's the housing complex, so it's the families coming and going all day long. But nonetheless, so Kevin, actually, I want to start with how you and I met and how we know each other. We're both part of the MADAR Network. It rhymes with radar, but it's with an M, MADAR, MADAR.site. And I'll put that link in our description and on the visual aspect of things as well. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. What was it now? 2 years ago, Fran Ridge reached out to me out of the blue and said, Kevin, we've been kind of following you on Facebook, and I don't know if you've ever heard of MADAR or not, but he kind of explained what it is. And if I can briefly describe it, much to my surprise, and I was very happy to learn about this. All over planet Earth, there's little nodes, and they're literally about the size of a cigarette box. They're very small, and the whole idea is we set these up in common people's homes that want to be operators, and it works over the internet. And what it does, it detects magnetic anomalies in your local area. And I believe the range and it's hard to say a range doesn't really work on range like radar does. It works on the strength of the signal, maybe approximately 400 miles or so. I mean, it's got a pretty good footprint. And the idea being, it's been observed over time that when UAP, unknown aerial phenomenon, does enter our atmosphere, it tends to create a magnetic disturbance. So what these little units do is it detects magnetic disturbances in your local area, and real local to you, there can be a lot of them. You can have microwave interference, you can have AM radio, that's a big one, interference, CB radio interference. And what this thing does is it filters out all that background noise. And if it gets an actual detection that sends off an alert, it goes into the internet, and it's fused together. So the folks, Fran Ridge's team back at headquarters, they get the alert, and if it's a real UAP coming down the land in my field, they have a flyaway team, and they're going to come out here and do an investigation. And these things are all over the planet now. My actual role is a global outreach coordinator, and I'm always on the hunt for new operators. Now, it's the type of thing where we just don't want anyone buying these units. We are looking for dedicated operators, because the thing is, even right now, if my unit goes off, it's right here, real loud siren. The whole idea is to run outside with the camera and get a picture. That way, I've got an image matched up with data.
Exactly.
That's never been done, as far as I know, by a civilian effort, by a civilian team. And we're hoping that will constitute smoking gun evidence. And right now, that's kind of lacking on the civilian side of the world. And the neat thing about our project is, if and when we find something, it's going to be fully accessible. It's not going to be locked up behind a closed door. Totally civilian run, civilian led, civilian funded, and a bunch of really good hearted people behind the scenes doing it.
Yeah,
and
that's
basically
awesome.
what MADAR is. If you have any other, did I miss anything on it so far?
That sums it up way better than I could. But yeah, I think you got all of it.
And madar.site, MADAR.site, just go there, all the information you want there, and then contact me if you're interested in being an operator.
Awesome.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, you and I met on that forum, as it were, and Stuart and I met on a different forum many years ago on a musicians forum. So I kind of want to break the ice with you with a musical question, because I know that you like the song "Zombie" by the Cranberries, and I'm wondering what about that song really that you like so much?
I just like the way that it moves me. It gives me goosebumps. I'm sure it happens to you folks too when I hear a good. I'm very empathic, so when I sense or feel or see something it gets to me that way, my whole body just kind of vibrates.
Nice.
I really feel it, and that song does it for me. I'll listen to music all day.
Awesome.
Yeah. You guys too, I'm thinking.
Yeah. Stuart, who do you like most?
Well, at the moment, I'm really enjoying the whole jazz genre because I'm singing in a big band, doing those Frank Sinatra type songs. I really love that. Nat King Cole, all that kind of thing.
My wife too. Yep.
Nice.
Classical and jazz, and
there's almost a quantum entanglement aspect that happens with the arts, with music, where we're transmitting one signal from one heart to another, and it's received. It's a very beautiful thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, very
it's
true.
Amazing how much quantum entanglement probably has to do with reality, huh? But maybe we live in a universe full of mirrors.
That would be wild.
Yeah. Not physical mirrors like you shave with, but you get the idea, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So, you were actually. Could you give us just a sort of quick history of your career in the Navy before we?
Certainly.
I think that's important.
Yeah, and it goes all the way back to high school for me. When I was in high school, I wasn't a nerd or a jock. I didn't play on the football team and all that kind of stuff. I was more of the adventure guy. Had a small group of friends, and we'd hang out and have fun. But I had another group of friends. We'd go out into the mountains and do things like snowshoeing, snow camping, hiking, mountain climbing, and rock climbing. Never did any hunting. I'm not really a hunter. I have my own feelings about that. And so when I was getting ready to graduate, I had that burning desire for adventure. And so I applied to be an American Field Service AFS exchange student, and I was chosen, and I went to Australia, and that really whet my appetite for travel. And Australia to this moment is one of my favorite countries on the planet.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love the people. Our strongest ally. I'm already doing it. Sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
Quite all right.
Yeah. And so I came home and got my associate's degree, and I still had it. And I was like, what am I going to do? So my itchy feet took me to Colorado. And believe it or not, I became a door-to-door Grolier encyclopedia. You remember the old encyclopedias called Grolier Encyclopedia? Anyway, I sold those from door to door all over the Midwest.
Wow.
And it came in handy years later, because I learned how to get yelled at really well. It served me well in the Navy. Yeah. And I did that for about a year. And then my parents had moved to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, up by the Grand Tetons. And, I couldn't resist that. So I moved out there with them, and I became a ski bum on the local hill, cleaning the local school at nighttime and ski time in the daytime. Did that for almost 3 years. And by then I was about 26, and I wanted to still travel. So I ended up joining the Navy. And because I was a little bit older, I did really well. I graduated #1 from out of 90 students in radar school, operations specialist A school for radar. And because of that, I got to choose orders. And back then in the 80s, early 90s, spy radar ships, basically shipboard phased array radar system, no longer rotates. It looks in all places all at once, all the time, and it's a fused picture. So I chose orders to USS Vincennes in San Diego, California. And this is hard to talk about.
I understand.
1988, my first deployment. We're in the Persian Gulf, Iran-Iraq war. They were getting ready to shut down the oil shipments. It was going to stop commerce on the planet, essentially, at the time. And so we were over there, and the USS Stark had gotten hit by an Exocet missile from an Iranian aircraft, and killed 37 sailors. And on July 3rd, we received intel. The next day was July 4th, our national holiday. Be on alert, be watchful. And sure enough, July 3rd, 1988, we were watching the Straits, and the Straits of Hormuz, and our helo was airborne, and apparently she got too close to Iranian international waters. And rightfully so, Iranian ball gamers came out to take a look. Hey, what are you guys doing here? And to this day, I'm not real clear what happened, but shots were fired. And then they started shooting at our helicopter. And, we went to general quarters. And my general quarter station just happened to have me right behind the captain, standing some uninvolved navigation watch. But I was about 5 feet from him. And there was some confusion because right during that time, an aircraft had launched out of Bandar Abbas in Iran and was coming straight for us. And we were all thinking, oh shit, here we go. And they were doing their best over on the air side. And I could kind of hear what was going on a little bit. And I heard people yelling, F-14, F-14. Excuse me. And I was thinking to myself, again, I'm empathic. I always have been. And I was thinking, Kevin, I don't think that's an F-14. I think that's a commercial airliner. Haven't you been seeing this like every morning make that same flight? But the problem, guys, and anyone watching, is in front of me, all the officers of the ship were sitting there. And heck, they'd been on watch with me. They had to have seen it. And I was getting very concerned. Here we are, the ship's tossing and turning like this, and because we're trying to weave and dodge and avoid these ball hammers, and we were surrounded by them. We sunk 9 of them. We were taking fire, trying to get the helo back on board too at the same time. And confusion air picture, and the captain stands up, Captain Rogers, and he yells out in combat in the boisterous voice, like real emphatically, "Make gosh darn," he cuffs, "make gosh darn sure that is not a commercial airliner." And I kind of relaxed and was holding on to the table behind me, kind of hold on because we're tipping and turning like this. And I was like, oh God, thank God. And right then, he stood up and turned the key. We launched 2 missiles. And we killed 296 people. It was a commercial airliner, Flight 655, crashed into the sea. I almost got out. One of my best friends was Iranian. I didn't know what to do. But then that night, I had an inspiration. A poem that I don't have available with me right now. It's over there. Popped into my head, and it gave me solace and inspiration. And I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to get out. I'm going to stay in. I'm going to make goddamn sure this never happens again. And that was my inspiration to be the best. And hopefully I succeeded.
I would say
Well,
that
bless
you
you,
did.
sir. I respect that.
It was hard. And I was only able to do it because I apparently was able to compartmentalize it in my head and just use it as a private source.
Wow.
Of inspiration and power and reasons for being there. And I became I was never an asshole, I just wasn't that chief petty officer in the Navy. But I was pretty darn adamant when it came to protecting commercial airliners, you can believe me. Oh yeah. I motherhooded the comm air routes big time. And made dang sure, and that concern for safety carried over into our aircraft and allied aircraft. And I became an air intercept controller out of all that. And I went to Top Gun school and became a Top Gun weapons tactic instructor, which is even more rare. And right now there's probably, in the whole Navy, there's probably 20 people with that title. And you know what? Back in the day, I was one of them. And
Dang, that's
that's
impressive.
roughly how many there is. Right now, probably about roughly 20, if that. So if you hear strange noises, that's my cat's playing. Anyway, I hope I answered the question well enough without taking all the time here.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
I just wanted to, get a history of where you were sort of coming from and your involvement in your career in the military, Navy. So to
that was one bookend of my career. And remember, that was my first deployment.
Wow.
We got ready to talk about Tic Tac here in a few minutes, and that's the other bookend. And we'll talk about that. And it's just kind of weird, the serendipity of the whole thing.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
kind of a defining moment.
Oh yeah.
if we
Yeah.
can, I'd sort of like to go into that now with the Tic Tac. I'm sort of the impression that you were potentially like the first person to sort of lay eyes on it, as it were, even though it was on radar. Would that be an accurate statement?
It's kind of hard to, if you had a, even if you had a stopwatch at the time, it would be real hard to ascertain who was actually the first. So it was definitely our watch team, because our ship, the USS Princeton, was the air defense commander for the strike group, for the Nimitz strike group, and the our ship's captain, Captain Smith, was the air defense commander, and I was his, on the listed side of the house, I was his right hand man. I did all things air defense for him. So I went up to, so we were out to sea, and in just a couple months, the whole strike group was getting ready to go on deployment over to the Middle East, and I was getting ready to transfer. This was my last time on a ship ever. Remember, my first deployment was my first time, and this was my last time on a ship. My very last time in uniform on a ship.
Wow.
And my role then was as the senior trainer, as a combat systems training team, one of the senior leaders. And my job was to grade the exercise and come up with lessons learned so they could make some fine-tune adjustments and go on deployment, training related stuff, personal qualification standards, that type of stuff. So we're getting ready to do a big air defense exercise that I've been planning and working towards for a couple months. We had briefed it and everything. And I'm real busy, of course. And I go up into Combat Information Center. We call it Combat for short, or CIC for short. And I look up on the screen, and there's this strange objects. And the reason why I say strange is because our ballistic missile defense team had detected these things from low Earth orbit, around 80,000 feet. And I say that number because it's published. I'm not going to say anything that's classified.
Okay.
And it was really strange because they would appear in groups of 5 to 10 at a time and just kind of stay there for a second. And then they would zorch down in a second, down to between 20 and 28,000 feet, right off the east coast of Catalina Island, and just kind of hang out there. And then after a time, remember, there was each time there was 5 to 10 in a group. If my hand here is the group and my head is Catalina Island, I know the directions are messed up here a little bit. And they would come one by one. They would individually. A single one would leave the group, and it would travel very slowly through the operations area, Whiskey 291, where our playground area, and float right over the top of us. And they would track right past us, almost like they were looking down, checking us out. And I was thinking to myself, I've never seen anything. How could something fly and drop from Earth orbit that quickly and then want to move that slowly from Catalina Island? And every one of these objects disappeared off radar in exactly the same spot in the sky.
Wow.
And that was approximately 60 miles north of Guadalupe Island off the coast of Mexico.
So, Kevin, whatever that was trying to indicate a certain location to you, I imagine.
I believe you're absolutely correct. Yeah, I really do. And so I was frantically trying to find anything that was published about, okay, if someone put an exercise on top of mine and we just didn't know about it, which is highly illegal, by the way. In other words, you can't test a military unit with another test layered on top of theirs without them knowing it, because people die, things get broken that way, and it's become illegal. But I was thinking, okay, maybe someone just screwed the pooch, and there's a simple explanation. So I was frantically looking in the NOTAMs and any documentation we had on class, confidential, secret. Nope, there was nothing. No, we had no direction from higher authority, so we were tracking and reporting on the radar. And remember, we have a fused picture, and we have several ships out there, and it all comes into a single consolidated picture. and we have our version of the internet or data links, and we're sending the information back to the beach to higher authorities. So if anyone wanted to see these things, they could. And I wasn't really concerned about them from a hostile point of view. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you, it's very strange because it's even weird to admit it, but I had this weird feeling of love, benevolence, and I honestly thought they were there to see the whales. I know that sounds crazy. I totally understand that. But please remember, this was the month of November, and the gray whales, they migrate from Catalina Island to Guadalupe Island every November. So in my mind it was working abductively at the time, trying to fuse it. Well, I was trying to ID these things, identify them. What the hell? I couldn't. I was assigning it to some sort of natural phenomena. So I wasn't that concerned. And then until that we were the air wing, because we didn't have any aircraft on board the Nimitz at the time when we first detected them. And over the whole course of time, it was about 10 days. So, and if you added all the groups together, about 100 groups.
Wow.
100 total objects. Remember, there were in groups of 5 to 10 at a time over a course of 10 days. But when the air wing came on board, we were going to do the air defense exercise the next morning. And that's when I became concerned, because I was concerned about safety of flight. Because I had unknown objects in my airspace, and I was getting ready to fill that same airspace with our own aircraft. And aircraft launching off the beach that were going to play the role of adversary inbound aircraft we had to defend against. So Captain Smith came down to combat, and I said, "Hey, sir, we've been tracking these things for several days, and your senior chief petty officer here has no idea what they are. And I'm extremely concerned about safety of flight. And I very highly recommend that," and I looked him right in the eye, "that we suspend training and go out and look at one of these, sir. Because if I run into one of these, someone's going to ask us both why we were so damn curious." And he looked at me real hard and he says, "You're right, Senior Chief, intercept and VID, visually identify." And I was like, F word, yes. I was stoked because I'd been wanting to intercept these things from the moment I saw them. I go back in the air side of combat, and I was greeted by a bunch of smiling, happy faces. So Fast Eagle 01 launches, Commander Fravor's flight. We take control, gave him the real tasking, and off he goes. We direct him to the closest object, which was in about 30 miles north of us. And as soon as he gets into the same vertical piece of sky, we call it a merge plot. And remember, this radar system, I'm not looking at raw radar. I'm looking at symbols. So I've got his aircraft and I've got this unknown object aircraft, and they're merged now. And as soon as he gets to merge plot, whatever that thing was drops from 20,000 feet down to 50 feet above the water in 0.78 seconds.
Wow.
Whoa.
No sonic boom. So he goes chasing it down, and whatever this thing was, it recognized him. And they got in a little dogfight, if you will, with this unknown object. And we have the communications piped into the overhead speaker. And Commander Fravor was a Top Gun. He was the commander of his squadron. One of the most talented pilots the Navy's ever produced, and experienced too, I might add, because he went through all the bush wars. I call them the bush wars, same as I did, right? And he gets on the radio and he starts yelling, "Oh my God, I'm engaged," just pooping his pants.
Wow.
Because this is an anomalous thing. He's never seen anything like this. And right then, whatever it was, and these are his words, disappeared right in front of him. And this is the most amazing thing. And this is the reason why I said it recognized him. Because in strike group air defense, let's say that this is the aircraft carrier. Over here, I've got combat stations all set up with different names. They're at known latitude and longitude positions and altitude positions. And everyone launching off the aircraft carrier, they know exactly where to go. It's all briefed. In case the bad guys come at us, we're all set to defend the aircraft carrier. That makes sense?
It does.
Yeah, so Commander Fast Eagle had their assigned cap station, and they were going to set theirs first. So we suspended training. He did the intercept, and then whatever this object was, it disappeared in front of him. In less than a second, 60 miles away, it went to his assigned cap station.
Whoa. Now, who would have been aware of that station, that location?
Only the people in the strike group.
Wow.
The enemy didn't even know where they were. When I say enemy, I'm talking about the exercise enemy aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were playing. We were all role playing. So somehow, and that, it's a secret location, just like it would be in the real world. Somehow that thing knew where it was. It knew our intention. That's the key thing. And you had mentioned earlier, you thought they were sending a message. That was part of the message, I believe. And I didn't realize that till years and years and years later. And I can describe that too. But I think it was a message. The intention is the key thing here. Intention itself. And I can describe why if we're ready to go there.
Very interesting. Yes, absolutely. What I do want to say, though, is I think I'd like to change our view real quick because I want to put two screens up so we can maybe put a map in and show the location of where you were.
Oh, certainly.
And maybe even we might even play a Tic-tac video as well, in case anyone hasn't seen it. I kind of feel like everybody literally in the world has seen that video, but we can first put up a map and then we'll play the Tic-tac video right after that. So I'm sorry, if you could proceed.
Yeah. So what happened was, remember, this was my last time on a ship, and after it happened, we canceled training. And I mean, totally it was canceled because we deemed that whole operation area unsafe for flight operations. And it definitely was. Because these objects were in our training space for about 10 days. And, the ship has a schedule and we weren't able to keep it if we stayed out there. So we had to go back in. And as soon as the ship came back in, I transferred. I was off the ship. And, I had orders. I already knew I was going. And I went over to Commander Naval Air Pack over on Guadalupe Island. And during the post exercise meetings, I raised my hand and said, hey, we have a safety of flight problem here off the coast. And everyone looked at me, of course. So what are you talking about, Senior Chief? And when I tried to describe what happened, oh, God, this still hurts. I got laughed at.
Really?
And no one believed it. And all they heard was UFO. I mean, there was cartoons running the papers on the shipboard papers, newspapers, and you go into meetings, people sidebarring off, looking at you weird. You could just feel it. They thought, what the hell? Here, this guy has all this experience, and he's senior chief, and he's telling us he had tracked a UFO. They couldn't process it. That's all they heard. And even me, I was like, it was hard. And the more time went on, the less and less I was willing to talk about it. And I was up for Master Chief. I was an E8, and I was up for Master Chief E9. And for whatever reason, during the year I was up, they only made one in the whole Navy. And because of all that, and if I had stayed in the Navy, I was heading back to sea on yet another ship, and I'd already done 6. I was, at that point, I had 22 years in. So, and I had a good job offer in Department of Defense. So I said, screw this, I'm punching. So I got out, took the job. And again, my air defense hat in that role, I tried to say stuff in meetings. Once again, I got laughed at. Even harder this time. Accusations of drug use, which I wasn't doing, still don't to this day. I never have. So I got pissed. I really did. I was very upset. And instead of acting out in anger, I chose to do something about it. This was and my whole plan was to go back to school and get my master's degree, which I did. But I had some time before I started school, so I decided to write a book about this whole thing. And I ended up writing 4 short stories. And the name of the book is Sailor's Anthology right there. And the name of my short story that describes the Tic Tac encounter is The Seer. Not the seer, but the seer. SEE''R, the seer. And it fictionalizes the whole thing. It changes the people's names, but I kept the names of the ships and the word Tic Tac. I kept the name of the Tic Tac, and I did it on purpose. I wrote the other stories, I published it, and I published it in the Library of Congress in, I believe, February 2009. And I got my Library of Control, Congress Library Control number and everything. And my whole plan was, well, there's my evidence in case it ever becomes public. I'll be able to prove that it really happened. Because during the night, after this ADEX back in 04, all of our data was taken. All of our computer data, our radar data, our communications data was taken in the night by some plainclothes people that came on board the ship. There was no evidence. So my bad plan was to make my own evidence. And I went on in life. I went to get my master's degree. I had forgotten all about this whole thing. Years went by. I ended up over here in the wilderness, doing some geology work, and I found a massive deposit of minerals that extends from Northern California to Northern Washington. And there's a lot of interest in it now. NASA's interested in it. There was just a bunch of mining claims bought by a Canadian outfit out here, and they want to mine it. And now I'm not talking open pit mining. No way. This is wilderness here. It was extremely beautiful. And our family had a mining claim out there for 100 years, gold mining claim, and I didn't know nothing about gold mining or geology or mineralogy or anything, but I was convinced I could find the source, and I went out there with my cousin. We stayed there for about a year, and I did my underground research. I did my geology research, and I was able to come up with a theory, and it proved to be correct. And time went on, and I published but I realized I could never mine it because it's in the wilderness. But I was content. I found what it was, published my research, put it on the internet, and went on in life. And I'm leaving out a lot of details here for interest of the time. Okay, I could write 7 books on this thing. Until I started volunteering down at the local golf course because I came out of the wilderness. I was able to buy a home. Little bit down, note carried by the owner, my first house here. And I had forgotten all about this whole damn thing. Until that one day I was coming out of the kitchen and we were watching a golf tournament, and all of a sudden CNN broke on TV. And it played the Tic Tac video. I was so damn shocked. I dropped the plate and ran out with my hair on fire. And you know why? Because I knew where evidence was. And I knew I had to uncover it quickly. So I got home and I called Gary Voorhees, my buddy on the ship, and said, "What are we going to do, Gary?" And long story short, we came up with this idea to form a little nonprofit company called UAP Expeditions. More and more people got involved, and I got a couple of quantum physicists from New York University, Dr. Kevin Knuth and Matthew Zydogas, and Caroline Corey, the movie producer, funded the whole thing. And David Mason was there, technologist, and David Altman was there, another movie production person. Michael Hall, our attorney. We all showed up, and if I forgot to mention anyone, I'm sorry. So we ended up renting a house with a flat roof down in Huntington Beach, Newport Beach area, with a direct view to Catalina Island, and we had probably a table 20 feet long, set up with all kinds of the coolest gear you can imagine, scientific equipment, and we did it on a wing and a prayer. Gentlemen, we had no idea if anything was going to show up. How could we?
Mm-hmm.
But guess what happened? They did show up, and these are not my words. This is and I don't want to talk out of school here, but I think the leading theory right now from the academic side of the house is whatever these things were showed up in a wormhole, through a wormhole, because we detected 5 objects on radar and visually right above Catalina Island.
Wow.
Now, when you said you thought they were there for a message in 04 because of everything that they did, and they sent a message, and that was confirmed for me that moment on the SoCal roof, because Dr. Zydagas came over to me and says, "Kevin, I have a question for you." I said, what's going on, sir? He said, "Do you think intention has anything to do with this?" And I looked at him, my eyes got wide. I said, "Boy, howdy, I think that has everything to do with it. Intention. Think about this. It starts from a very simple question. My whole theory behind all this has to do with intention. And it's such a basic question. And here it is. There's 2 leading theories of the universe. You have the steady state. It is what it is right now, and it's always been this way, always will be this way. There was no beginning or end to it. And then you have the Big Bang theory. In either case, was the universe intentional or was it unintentional?
Oh, wow.
Now think about this. We don't know. It's an unknown unknowable. If you ask Chat GPT right now, it'll tell you it's an unknown unknowable. It really will. I've tried it. But I'm going to go ahead and assign a 50-50 because I don't know. All right. That's the statistical number I have to assign to it, 50-50. But that's a powerful thing if you think about it, because that means there's 50% chance the universe was intentional. Let's go with that, okay? Now, work through this chain of logic. Let me finish it here real quick. Okay, let's just assume the universe was intentional. Okay? If that's a given, what happened to the intender?
Right.
Did the intender choose to survive the Big Bang? Or did the intender commit a cosmic suicide instead? Okay, so again, 50-50, I don't know. Let's assume the intender of the Big Bang chose to survive its creation. Okay, now the question becomes, if it chose to survive, in what form? Is it currently a benign form where it just hangs out and doesn't ever do anything? Just there? Or is it an active force in the universe? Again, 50-50, I don't know. Okay, let's go with the intender. Universe is intended, intender survived it, intender's still alive, and it's an active force. Okay, right now we know there's 4 fundamental forces in the universe. You have gravity, you have strong nuclear, you have weak nuclear, and you have electromagnetism. I maintain that intention itself is the 5th fundamental force in the universe. It's actually a fundamental force, just like gravity, just like electromagnetism, just like your nuclear forces, and you can engineer objects from it.
Wow.
You can use intention just like you could electromagnetism. And I firmly believe that the UAP that we are seeing uses the physics of intention. These things, these objects do not have to have a biological creature inside of them. The actual machine itself is alive at the nanoscale level. Can you imagine you use your toaster oven? You walk up to your toaster oven and the toaster oven says, "Hi, Mike, good morning," and it winks at you. That's the type of technology we're talking about. It's alive, living, has a personality.
Wow. Can I ask if there is that like a theory, or is there information somewhere that sort of lends to that? As
I've asked exactly that to artificial intelligence to explore that question. And when I first started asking it, it came back with unknown, unknowable, unknown, unknowable, unknown, unknowable. But it didn't deny it. So the more I probed and the more I fine-tuned my questions, it finally accepted what I was saying. It did. Yeah, but to answer your question, the real question is no. In fact, I've never even heard it discussed. Have you? Have you ever heard my theory anywhere? I mean, you've heard it generally,
a little bit, yeah. I mean, it's
but not with that type of specificity where I'm claiming that it has to be a fundamental force of the universe, just like electromagnetism. You can't destroy gravity, can you?
No.
And so I don't think you can destroy intention either.
Would you say it's a type of consciousness in the universe, an awareness?
Absolutely, but I don't think the word consciousness is encompassing enough. Because even a fly is conscious, and it has intent. It has intent. But the type of intention I'm talking about is fundamental. It's all-encompassing. There is no beginning or end. There is no time. Time does not exist for intention. Time does not exist for gravity, does it? I mean, I'm asking you, does time matter to gravity? Doesn't exist.
True.
Right. It sounds like bordering into esoteric knowledge there with the kind of universal consciousness, hermetic knowledge.
I can't even believe I'm saying these things. I mean, it sounds crazy. I know. I totally understand. I get it. I was never the UFO guy before all this. I was pretty straight stick radar operator and just an average person, I think. I used to, I mean, always been curious. Kept my eyes to the skies as a radar guy and used to listen to Art Bell on Coast to Coast AM, of course. But I mean, if you talk to anyone I serve with, they would never say I was a UFO guy. No way.
Well, it sounds like that scientist you're with is viewing it from this perspective and through this lens. If that scientist was asking you about, do you think this is involving intention?
Rephrase the question or ask it again.
Well, that scientist you're with out of Catalina when this phenomena appeared again, asked you the question, do you think that intention is related to this phenomena? Now, that indicates to me that scientist is already thinking in a similar way to the way you're thinking.
I do too. And they're doing academic papers on the expedition, and right now it's in peer review. And I've seen an early version of it, but I'm not sure what's holding it up. I mean, that was a long time ago now. So, but you know how the college system works. The board of trustees they tend to be pretty conservative types of people. So who knows?
Well, I want to tell you too, like that scientist obviously has a respect for your opinion on the subject because the fact that you were asked that question indicates that they're very interested in your perspective.
I have to agree. I think it's safe to say I've put a lot of thought and research into this stuff. I'm not a physicist. I did take physics in high school as far as I ever went. But I do have to tell you, I have read a lot of physics papers in the last couple of years. And I've made a really cool discovery is, guess what? You don't have to be a physicist to understand physics. And I mean, now some of the equations you see, they look like hieroglyphics to us or some
Yeah.
sort of alien writing, right? But when you really start to look at them more closely, all they really say is A plus B equals C. Because the fancy term here and the fancy term here, when you really look at it, it's just and there's a plus sign in the middle. So this plus this equals that. I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it? I mean, or, so I try not to get all wrapped around the axle on how the actual statistics side is working. I try to understand it from a higher perspective to understand the point of it, if that makes any sense.
do. Yeah, that's a more holistic approach, whereas the formula are trying to understand and record.
I'm not qualified for that. I haven't taken that type of math. That's years. I mean, you dedicate your life to that type of pursuit.
So, Kevin, I'm kind of curious with and if you can't answer this question, it's understandable. But with the radar and you're tracking the Tic Tacs on radar, I'm wondering, first of all, what do they look like? Are they like blobs, or do you see the actual shape? And then also, is there a specific material, thickness, or size that would show up on radar versus not show up on radar?
Excellent questions. Now, the Aegis Combat Weapons System takes all of the radar inputs and other inputs as well, by the way, and fuses it all into a common picture, which we all share within the strike group. And also we can, put it on the data links and send it out to other places. Now, I had mentioned earlier where modern day radar, we don't look at raw radar unless we really want to. We use a system of symbologies, and air contacts and surface contacts and subsurface contacts all have their own basic symbology. And very quickly, if you were to look at a screen, you could tell who's who in the zoo just by looking at the symbols.
Okay.
And then you hook what we call hook it. Basically, just like your mouse, you pause over the top of it and you click on it and it pulls up the information based on that one specific contact of interest you have. Ask me the question one more time.
So I was curious. I was like, did they show up as blobs and such? And that answer that it sounds like it's in a way it's similar to the commercially available radar that I will sometimes use when I'm investigating something. But
Right.
The other part of the question was there a specific material, thickness, or size of the thing in the sky that would show up versus something that would not show up?
Again, an excellent question, and it borderlines classified information.
I kind of figured. I had to ask, but I kind of figured.
I'll just tell you, it can easily track a drone. The system we're talking about, they can track drone-size objects with zero trouble at quite a distance. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
And obviously it depends on, the Earth is curved, and I have a radar horizon. So if it's over the horizon too far, the radar is not going to pick it up. But we have a very good detection range on small objects. Put it that way.
Kevin, could I ask you?
That was 20 years ago. Now it's changed a lot since I've been there. I was working with Spy 1 ships, and now they're up to Spy 6.
Could I ask you what do you think the shift was? Why did this incident go from personnel coming onto the ship and removing the data to it appearing on CNN? What changed?
An excellent question. And if you can imagine how shocked I was, totally out of the blue, here comes this thing. I had forgotten all about it, moved on in life. And I was thinking the same thing. Okay, what in the hell happened? And then come to find out, it was, God bless him, Commander Fravor. Yeah, apparently when ATIP came into being, Lou Elizondo, Tom DeLong, and they've been here at my house and they've interviewed me, and God bless those guys. And As it turned out, Commander Fravor had been working with them for quite a time before I was pulled into it.
If I could, I think you're talking about the To the Stars.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, shoot. Yeah, To the Stars Academy, TTSA.
So you were saying about Commander Fravor came about.
Yeah, he and then they convinced him. I'm not sure how or why, but they convinced him, and he went public, and that's how it all came back into the spotlight, if you will. And somehow Lou knew about the existence of my book in the Library of Congress, and that's how they ended up coming knocking on my door. Now, here's an interesting sidebar to all this. Right after I'd come out of the wilderness doing my geological research, I was basically houseless. I didn't have a home. I was separated from my wife of 30 years. We're now divorced. I had lost everything, literally. I lost all my houses. I was almost flat broke, surviving on my retirement income and giving her half of it. She was down in Sacramento. I was here in Southern Oregon. And so remind me of the question one more time.
Well,
A lot of this stuff is so emotional for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm interested to know how the shift occurred from 1 minute the data is being taken off the ship and confiscated, and then next you're seeing it on CNN. And what are the chain of events? Like, you might not necessarily be aware of all of them, but what are the incidents that you are aware of?
Okay, and then I was doing a sidebar. So, interesting thing that happened. I was over at a friend's house. I just come out of the mountains, and there was just two gentlemen there, and they acted like, "Oh, Kevin, we're glad you showed up. We were trying to track you down. We wanted to meet you because we're rock hounds, and we saw your geology research on the internet, and we want you to take us out to the wilderness. We want to check it out and see it." And they were friends of my friend, and I said, "Heck yeah, let's go out there." So we went out there, and they ended up saving my dog from a black bear. Because I didn't take my sidearm with me. They had one, and I saw he was wearing it. And right then, I was kind of, this guy's acted too. They didn't fit in here, put it that way, if that makes any sense. Because this is a pretty roughneck kind of place, if you know what I mean. It's in the country, and lots of medical and not medical marijuana growers all around. You know, I mean, you gotta want to live here, right?
Well, what exactly do you mean by they didn't quite fit in? Can you go into a little more detail about that?
Yeah, they look like you. I mean, they were well dressed, and I noticed they went by the name of Forrest and Shakate, and I noticed Forrest had a sidearm. He had a weapon, right? So when Red Dog started chasing the black bear, I looked at Forrest. I said, "Hurry, shoot, fire one round!" And quicker than I could blink, right by my ear.
Wow.
Dang.
Yeah, Red Dog broke off chase and came running back up the hill. And right then I knew, okay, these guys are not really what they say they are. So anyway, we roll back off the mountain. We get back to my house, and they set me down in my room, and Shakate looks at me and says, "Kevin, we got something to tell you." And I said, "Oh boy, here it comes." And he started off by saying, "We're not sure how to say this, but you are incredibly important to what's about to happen." And I looked at him like they were on drugs. I had no idea, especially when he looked at me again. He said, "We do not want you to make a continental plate slip into the ocean."
Wow.
Can you imagine? I was thinking, okay, you guys are all dressed and you're clean cut and you're strapped and you're obviously well trained in weapons, and you're telling me this, and you're not who you said you were. And just what the F or what in the? I didn't know how to take it.
So,
what do you do with that?
So this happened before the video comes out on CNN, or immediately after?
Oh yeah, this was back in 2014.
Okay, so that would have been what, about 3 years before?
Yeah. So when Lou did come, he interviewed me, and that interview's all available on the internet. I pulled him off the side. I said, "Hey, Lou, I got a question for you." He said, "What's up?" I said, did you happen to know those two guys that came to see me in 2014? I said, Forrest and Shakate. And he kind of he steps back like, wow. And he looks at me and kind of winks a little bit and says, I emailed them.
Wow.
So that's how it's all kind of related. So yeah, I've been being watched for a long time. And oh, by the way, we're being watched right now, just so you know. I've had people here in town watching me. It's on my computer. They're watching my phone, my email, everything I do on the internet. But you know what? I have to tell you, I'm perfectly cool with it. And in fact, I'm glad they are. I really am. Because I kind of hope maybe they're watching out for me too.
Wow. They obviously thought you're...
What we do here, gentlemen, is it entirely safe? I don't know if you realize that or not.
Oh, I'm fine with that. They obviously feel that your intention, your power of intention is very strong.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. Because oddly enough, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but when we started talking, sir, before doing this, and we were talking about what we were going to say and the questions I was going to ask and such, it wasn't very long after that the only public profile that I have that doesn't have a lot of action on it, because I'm not very much into social media, it actually received a digital visit from AFOSI, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. I do have someone that I've granted access to that might be the answer to that, but they don't work for the Air Force. There's a different branch of the military. So I don't know what to think of that. I just find it's interesting that it happened relatively soon after, we all started talking about this. But with that said, do you have any non-disclosure or other such agreements that would preclude you from discussing certain aspects of UAP, commonly referred to as UFOs?
No, I don't. In fact, as strange as it sounds, I believe that I'm being used to talk about it.
Interesting.
Well,
can you elaborate?
I try to put myself in their shoes. What would I do? What would I do if it was my job to protect all of us, to keep us all safe? And so I try to be as non-emotional as I can, thinking about the whole surveillance aspect of this, because you know what? With the shoes on different feet, if I was wearing their shoes, I would be watching me too. I'd want to know what the hell I was up to. What were my intentions? Am I up to no good here? What, is someone paying me? All those questions. In fact, I would be concerned if they weren't watching me. Think about it. Duh.
I think the big question a lot of people would ask, and even myself, is why, though? Why such a big darn deal over this?
Well, that's a very good question.
And the answer to that question is in next episode, part 2. In fact, part 2 is going to be an extended session of around 2 hours. Kevin and Reverend Stu start talking about the spiritual and esoteric nature of UAP, and by no coincidence, that is the core foundation of why this channel even began. So you don't want to miss it. This is truly never before heard conversation, free to the world. It's fascinating and everything is interconnected. If you like what you see so far, do help us out. Hit that button. Comment, like, subscribe, share, bell, blast this information off to the world. The more interest that we have from you, the more exciting episodes that we're going to put out there for free to the planet. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you real soon.